Okay, let's talk about something absolutely ginormous. This is the Orc kill rig. It is ginormous by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, if I move it closer, there we go. Here it is, next to a Primaris Space Marine. Here it is, next to an ordinary Orc boy. This thing is ginormous, and if you want to build it, it is going to take up an absolute ton of your resources. When you take on a project, and it's something like this, a little Orc boy, it's going to use hardly any glue to assemble. You might have to stick the arms together, the head on, the legs, but that's about it. It's very little involved in terms of glue. When you build a big model, you're going to use a ton of glue. As an example, I used most of this building the Orc kill rig, maybe about half of it to be more accurate, because I had built some other stuff previously using that glue. But that is virtually empty now after building it, and it's something to consider when you are building large models, that it's going to take a lot of parts and a lot of glue to stick those parts together. You also have a huge amount of paint to get through as well. If you look at just this model, for example, of a large model to paint, you have got all of these little troops sitting here on top. They each get painted up. The equivalent of painting up on this, in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 infantrymen. You also have the big squig, and then you have the actual armoured part, the carrier itself. So imagine that on a Titan or something else, and you can see you're going to get through a huge amount of paint. Basing materials are also something else to consider. I use more basing materials on this one miniature than I have on any other miniature. I got through most of this bottle of glue. Loads and loads of flock and sand and all the other parts that go into making a great base. You don't realise until you actually build one of these large models just how big and how much material they consume on the base. Then there's price to consider. These box sets for large models, they cost a huge amount of money compared to just a squad of ordinary troops or a leader, a HQ. And also on top of that, you have to consider that these will eat up a huge supply of everything else involved. As I've mentioned, basing materials, paint, glue, and time. You really need to consider whether a big project for a big model is what you want to do. These large centerpiece models are amazing to look at, but before you begin one, it's a huge project. You really do have to consider if you have the time, the effort, and the resources to put into it. It's a lot more than painting almost anything else within your army, even whole squads. I would say that I've been able to paint most of my Orc force for the Beast Snaggers for less than what I have been able to produce that one kill rig. And for even bigger models such as Titans or Knights or things like that, you're going to eat through a huge amount of supplies and your time. So really think about whether you have the time and effort and resources to really put into this. But if you do, it will definitely be worth it. When you see that model standing amongst your army, you will be so amazed and so proud of what you've achieved. But just bear all these things in mind before you go ahead with a big project.